To continue on and just point out on page 2, we were asked for tuition accounting. That is all the tuition that is received and passed through to the town. You can see it's BOE, and the Ag Ed Special Ed is an additional charge to towns, and that's by year as well. I'm not going to go through all these unless there are questions. Question 3 was about collaboration. We are a member of RIC, which is the Regional Interdistrict Collaborative. That is how we actually began our bus collaborative bidding process. We also do work especially in special education, but also professional development and many other areas that we share there. Also in recruitment of teachers, and there are many areas that we can share. Alliance District funding, we did try to include the names of teachers in the budget who are funded by the Alliance District, so even though they don't affect the budget. What we did this year that was different, and we decided in September after certainly the budget was long passed and the Alliance grant was awarded, was that most of the teachers, the coaches anyway, who had been funded by the Ed Jobs Fund, which ended September 30th, some of those were going to be funded by the Alliance District. And in the previous 2 budgets, we had budgeted those people in local funds and put their replacements in Ed Jobs Fund. And now we're doing that again for a new grant. And so we made the decision in central office to put the people in the Alliance grant who actually are being paid by the Alliance grant and are doing that type of work rather than paying their replacement. And so that's why there was a shift. You'll see Emily Trexler, who was a mathematics coach. She's now paid for by the Alliance grant. She was paid for, her replacement was paid for by Ed Jobs Fund for the last 2 years. Now she is going to be paid out of the Alliance grant. In addition, one of the 2 behavior coaches, there's only one in the Alliance grant. The other one did say Alliance grant. It's not. That's being paid by tuition revenue through Mrs. Buell. So that person was not. That was a mistake. That would be Hillary Berard, and that would be in pupil personnel budget. So we are in the process of moving. We found out as we moved through the fall, there were some people that weren't moved. This was in the budget process. So we will prepare a report for you. It is not ready. That was something we could not get done today, but that is the explanation as to why the numbers do not add up to where they should add up. Another example would be we have a teacher, let's say one of our math coaches who was funded locally for $75,000, moved to the Alliance grant. So she would be funded $75,000 there, but her replacement in local would be paid for perhaps $50,000. So the Alliance grant would fund $50,000 of her salary, and the local would fill up, that's for this year, would complete that. So at the end of this year, we'll be reviewing the Alliance grant. We have to apply every single year, not that we don't continue to get it, but we change it. And so there'll be changes based on the finances this year because we've moved the real people into the grant. So we will provide an entire report for you on the Alliance grant. We're actually getting one ready for the state right now, so that will be coming. Capital non-recurring is appendix or addition A. That is right after page 9 in this document. It is 11 pages long, and the reason we gave you the 11 pages is that the first 3 pages are requests that we have put in that were effective after the report you've received was printed. And so that's why there is a difference, because we did make 3 requests after the report was printed. That was the last report we had. So that is an 11-page document for you that really does detail what has been happening over the years in terms of that grant. The grant list at this point with the town, we do not have information, nor were we able to get any. I don't even know if that's available at this point. I do know we will have Mr. Ludicky and Mayor Abel with us in a moment speaking, and so they may certainly be able to give you a timeline for that kind of information. Athletic director is Appendix B, and so that's right after the 11 pages of Appendix A. It's 2 pages. The position that we had was curriculum coordinator for health, physical education, and athletics and intramurals. And athletics and intramurals would be the athletic director position. There's a request about the internal service fund for computers, and I did ask if Mayor Abel could respond to that, so we'll do that very quickly in a moment. Mrs. Morasso has explained about the textbooks. We had a question on page 5. The question we received last night was what percentage we could count on for education cost share for ECS was the question. And I wasn't sure, and we do have that number, and they give it to us, plus or minus, and that is answered in question 12, but my sense was from the question that we might have been talking about excess cost share or excess cost funding. And so I did ask Mrs. Buell to prepare that question, and Mrs. Buell, that is on
The very last,
page in your handout.
not numbered.
Right, and it is the back of that, so it's the very, very final page.
So to return to, try to explain what this is. There are different levels of funding based on where a student is placed, who places that student there. So there are times, so you can see grant 1, and if you look at the description, locally placed students who exceed the 4.5 times per pupil threshold. So I think a student needs an alternative program. We have to pay the first 4.5 times. We can request funding above and beyond that. Grant type 2, those are agency placed students. That might be DCF or the courts place a student in an alternative setting. And we're only responsible for 1 time the per pupil expenditure for that student. So, and then grant type 4 is an agency placed student, might be a regular ed student. Again, we're responsible for 1 time the per pupil expense. And then there's a no grant type, so students might fall into no grant type. They might be outplaced in the last couple months of school. Their cost does not exceed the 4.5 times per pupil expenditure, so we can't request any money back for those students. So when I built the budget out, you can see what I am anticipating based on current numbers. Grant type 1, the estimated cost to send those kids, or to have those kids placed in alternative programs. It explains there what Vernon is responsible for, so I'm going through the shaded box. Then it talks about the local cost. If ECS was 100% funded, that would be what our cost would be. Our eligible reimbursement, anything over 4.5 times or 1 time, so it depends on, again, on the grant type. So it just continues across that way. So we're eligible, so if you just take grant type 1, for example, we're eligible for $337,259. If we were 65% reimbursed, that's how much we can expect for reimbursement, leaving us with the cost of 1.457. You can see that. So then I added up the cost for what I anticipate today, what I know exists for students. And there's the total, $280,000. And so in the little box, the not shaded box, you can see what our current budget says. So we have currently budgeted a total of $2,762,554. The difference, you can see in the shaded box, is $482,000. Again, these placements can fluctuate. I took into each student that could potentially return to the public schools and didn't count their dollars in here. I took every student that could potentially graduate and didn't count their dollars. There are a lot of variables, and based on this year's current budget, which we're already in the hole, this is a almost safe number to budget. So I believe that the number that we have budgeted, although you see a little bit of excess there, I would caution you greatly to you know, that we just don't know what to expect. A student could move in tomorrow and, you know, that all of a sudden we're paying for that student this year and paying for them next year because it's an appropriate placement for them to be in an alternative setting. So, questions on that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Buell. I bring your attention to page 6 and on the top of page 7 as well. Request was magnet school enrollment by grade. We did give you the history of the enrollment. We thought that was also information that you would find interesting. You can see the tuition costs going up each year and the enrollment going up each year. The first 3 years we do not have that history with us, but you can see the enrollment by grade level there as well. Most of these questions, I think, are self-explanatory. The last one that I would like to address would be attachment C, question 22. What percentage of our student population is really struggling out of our total number of students? And so attachment C would be just before what Mrs. Buell had. And on the first page, I've given you our free and reduced lunch numbers, and because they do figure into that, I've given you some comparisons. But free and reduced lunch, I've given you the last 3 official percentages, and they are rounded to the whole percent. But you can see that 1/3 of Center Road is living in poverty. 1 out of 5 students at Lake Street, 3/4 of Maple Street, over half of Northeast, half of Skinner. 2 out of every 5 at the middle school, 1 out of every 3 or 3 out of every 10 at the high school, and 2 out of every 5 across the district. And that is significant. If you look at the next 2 pages, going, well, it's like a full legal size. I'm not going to go through the numbers, but I'll explain what I did. I was asked for numbers. People wanted to know, how many students is that? How many students are truly struggling? And so the goal is goal for the state of Connecticut. And so you have here the number of students tested, so I'll go through grade 3 and leave it at that, in mathematics, reading, and writing. And it is different because there are students with IEPs that have different types of testing or may be exempt from testing. The number in parentheses right next to that is the total number of students who took that test who are on either free or reduced lunch, which is the way poverty is defined for many, many of our grants. The middle column is the number of students out of that total number tested who met goal. And next to that, the number out of that number of free and reduced who also met goal. And then the third column is the number of students below goal with the number of free and reduced. Over on the right-hand side, I have an average percent. So the average percent of students who met, which one was it? Who were below, that was the question, was how many are struggling. So the average percent in that grade level, not exceptionally scientific, but I was a mathematician, so it's not that bad. The percent who are struggling, who are below goal. And so you can see going down there in 3rd grade, 39%, 4th grade, 40%, generally 40%. In the 6th grade, we've got 46%. The high school, remember, the CAP is not a mastery test, it is a high goal test, so it's a different type of test. But there we have 59% of our students who are not meeting goal. I do have the numbers of the average numbers of those students as well. But these were questions that people have asked us, and the board was asking the other night, just how many students is that who are truly, truly struggling. The one other page that I would bring your attention to would be the next page Mrs. Buell prepared on the front of that last page, the front of that last page, the percent of the paraprofessional staff that is assigned to either Career Center, English as a second language, general education or regular education, special education, or special assignment, IDEA or special education, and Title I or at-risk students, which is paid for through the federal government. So that was just more information we thought that you could use. I certainly can address any of those questions individually. We did try to answer them. There were many hands, and I do thank everyone for all their work today, but many, many hands from across the district gave input to answer the questions as quickly as they did.
Thank you. Thank you for providing the details.